Nike. Now, a lot of us has been like, we wish she would have went with somebody else for all kinds of reasons. Whether it's Nike's heavy involvement with China, I don't love it. I didn't love it with LeBron. That's been an issue. The NBA, yada, yada, yada. The fact that they just seem to drop the ball forever with Caitlin Clark as a brand. Right? I mean,
$8 million a year from Nike. A signature shoe launching in her rookie season. Every major brand throwing offers at her. And yet, when Caitlin Clark sat down to explain why she chose Nike over Adidas and Under Armour, the reason came down to something most people didn't expect. Not the money, not the timeline, but a name that changed basketball forever.
This guy's insane. Let's get back to Nike though. I gotta ask some questions because I'm such a huge sneaker fan. You said that you're wearing the new kicks coming up this season.
Yeah.
I honestly, for everyone that doesn't know like the process that goes into like making the sneakers, like how long in advance has it been, or like when does it all start? Do they come to you with a shoe, a bunch of shoes? Do you kind of get to tweak them here and there? How is that process?
Yeah, I think it's honestly been like probably one of the coolest things I've got to do since, honestly, the process started at the end of my senior year when I was at Iowa, because I was deciding what shoe company I was going to go with. And I talked to Nike, Adidas, and Under Armour, and they all offered me a signature shoe, obviously some faster than others. And, you know, everybody knows Nike makes the best product. It just kind of takes a little bit longer. And so I grew up wanting to be a Nike athlete. Every kid does. Nike, yeah. Jordan, like that's the premier brand, and everybody knows.
There it is. Nike, Adidas, and Under Armour all offered her a signature shoe. All three brands knew what they had. This wasn't some speculative investment on a college prospect. By the end of her senior year at Iowa, Caitlin had already shattered NCAA scoring records, delivered the highest-rated women's basketball games in decades, and proven she could move merchandise. These companies weren't gambling. They were competing for the most marketable women's basketball player since Diana Taurasi. But here's what matters in that clip. She said all three offered signature shoes, but some faster than others. And then she dropped the key phrase, everybody knows Nike makes the best product. It just kind of takes a little bit longer. That's not a throwaway line. That's her acknowledging the exact criticism Nike has faced for the past year. While Under Armour was ready to move immediately, and Adidas was pushing hard with their recent WNBA investments, Nike was asking her to wait, and she was willing to do it.
Custom Kobe's, yeah.
Oh yeah, the custom Kobe's are fine. I sent like Harry and some of your friends some. They're like, how do we get the? I was like, I got you. But no, I mean, it's probably been like a year and a half now of like figuring out what exactly I want. And I think probably the most challenging part of it is like you want it to be unique, but at the same time, like I have to be comfortable wearing it. So I think we kind of like, you kind of take what you know you're comfortable in. Like obviously I play in a lot of Kobe's, but at the same time, I don't want it to be a Kobe. I want it to be something very unique to me and a little bit different. And I think for myself, like, you know, I kind of think about like what's kind of been important to me when I think about like shoes or sneakers. And I think like just the chaseability of them, and like, you want a certain sneaker or like you want a certain colorway. So I think that's like going to be probably the most fun part. Like, okay, great. Like you have like the mold of the shoe and like what it is and the technology that's in it. But more so, I think I'm more excited.
18 months. That's how long she's been working on this shoe. The process started at the end of her senior year at Iowa, which means this has been in development since March or April. And now we're looking at a potential launch around April 2025 when the WNBA season starts, assuming the league resolves its CBA negotiations and there actually is a season. Think about what that timeline means. Nike signed her, then spent a year and a half in development while Caitlin played her entire rookie season in Kobe Bryant's shoes. No signature branding, no custom colorways with her logo. Just standard team-issued Kobes while fans waited for her actual product to hit the market. That's a massive risk for both sides. Caitlin's betting that the wait produces something special enough to justify the delay. Nike's betting that her star power doesn't fade while competitors release their own women's basketball innovations. But listen to how she describes the design process. She doesn't want it to be a Kobe, even though that's what she's comfortable in. She wants something unique to her identity. And here's where it gets interesting. She specifically mentions the chaseability of sneakers. That's sneakerhead language. She's not just thinking about performance on the court, she's thinking about limited releases, exclusive colorways, and creating the kind of demand that turns shoes into collectible.
Signature shoe, like it is the coolest shit ever. But I remember LeBron came out with his first signature shoe, and it was like he had this Hummer in high school, the notorious Hummer, and he kind of like shaped or like made the shoes kind of resemble a Hummer's like look and model and everything like that. Like when it comes down to like it being true to you, I can't wait to see exactly what this thing looks like. And you already know I'll be the first one in line to get them.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be cool. And it's
Okay, I'm gonna.
And then she confirms what we've all been speculating. A Chiefs colorway is coming. Red and gold Caitlin Clark signature shoes. She's already planning collaborations and special editions before the base model even launches. That level of strategic thinking tells you everything about why Nike wanted her. She's not just an athlete who'll wear whatever they give her. She understands brand building, understands sneaker culture, and she's already planning how to maximize the release strategy.
And a little New Year's Eve surprise is on the New Heights podcast with Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce. Now, we all know she's a massive fan of Taylor Swift, of whom that, of course, Travis Kelce's going to marry, and she's a huge Kansas City Chiefs fan. Not surprising, she's going on New Heights. But while she was on there, of course, and I have a suspicion multiple videos are coming out of this podcast episode, but she decided to explain her decision to go with Nike.
There's the Jordan connection. And this is what so many people miss when they criticize her Nike deal. It's not just Nike, it's the Jordan brand legacy. It's the cultural weight of being associated with the most iconic athlete in basketball history. Travis Kelce mentions LeBron's first signature shoe being modeled after his Hummer. And that's actually the perfect comparison. LeBron's shoe wasn't just about performance technology, it was about his identity, his story, his cultural moment. And LeBron chose Nike specifically because of the Jordan connection, even though Reebok offered him more money initially. Caitlin's making the same calculation. Under Armour has Steph Curry. And by the way, reports came out in December that Curry was furious with Under Armour's leadership for not landing Caitlin. He personally wanted her in the brand because he saw the obvious parallel. Her game mirrors hit, long-range shooting, high basketball IQ, changes the geometry of the floor. If anyone should be wearing Curry-branded shoes, it's the woman who plays like the female version of Steph Curry. But she didn't choose Under Armour. She chose the brand that has Jordan. And when you're trying to build a legacy in basketball, that association matters.
Stop it right there. You guys can go watch. It looks like it's a 2-hour podcast. So there's going to be plenty there out of this. Like I said, this likely won't be the only video that comes out of that. Just due to the fact there's not much out there right now. I don't know if you've noticed, I made a video yesterday. You got a whole professional women's season about to start. It's crickets out there. But I can understand because I can understand wanting to go with Nike, and she brought it up. She dropped that name, and that name, of course, is Jordan. There was a time when I thought Nike was the end-all be-all of all sports brands. It wasn't until up till just a few years ago I really decided I wouldn't buy too many more Nike products or even buy any Nike products. Now I've got a couple of her shirts, and I don't know if my Sophie Cunningham shirt's also a Nike shirt. I don't know. It's a official Fever shirt, yada, yada, yada. But she relates basketball shoes to the GOAT, Michael Jordan. And I think we all suspect that's sort of where she's headed. So she put the Nike part together with her brand, and I get it. I get that part. She wanted to be with Nike, and because, well, it was Jordan, right? By the way, and I did not make a video on this, but evidently Steph Curry was furious with Under Armour, because that's who he's with, that they did not land her. Like, he was angry that they were not able to land Caitlin Clark, and so they could get her signature shoe. And I've said before, I think her game is similar to Steph Curry's, so I can see if she's going to be the women's basketball version of, Steph Curry launching logo threes, why he would want her and her branding power behind a shoe that he supports. Pretty cool. Tell me what you think. Peace. I'm out. Till next time.
Now let's talk about what she's not saying in these clips, because the context around this Nike deal has been controversial from the start. When she signed in April 2024, the reported deal was 8 years, $28 million. That's $3.5 million per year. For context, Sabrina Ionescu's Nike deal, signed in 2022, was reportedly worth around $1 million per year. So Caitlin's getting roughly 3.5 times what Sabrina got, and Sabrina was already considered one of the highest paid women's basketball players in endorsement deals. But here's where it gets complicated. Some analysts argued she left money on the table. Reports suggested Adidas was willing to go higher on the annual value, and Under Armour was ready to move faster on the signature shoe timeline. Puma, who wasn't mentioned in her interview, was also rumored to be preparing an offer before she took meetings. So why Nike? She says it in the clip. I grew up wanting to be a Nike athlete. Every kid does. Nike Jordan, that's the premier brand. That's brand loyalty overriding pure financial optimization. And in the sneaker industry, that kind of loyalty is exactly what Nike has built its empire on. They don't always pay the most, but they sell the dream of being part of the most iconic brand in sports. There's another factor she doesn't mention, but it's critical to understanding this deal. Nike's relationship with women's basketball has been inconsistent at best. They've had signature deals with players like Cheryl Swoops, Lisa Leslie, and Diana Taurasi, but none of those shoes achieved mainstream cultural penetration the way men's signature shoes have. The WNBA has been around for 27 years, and there's never been a women's basketball shoe that became a must-have cultural item. Caitlin's betting she can be the first, and Nike's betting that her crossover appeal, her fan base that includes massive numbers of male fans who don't typically watch women's basketball, can finally crack that market. But that's also why the 18-month development timeline is so risky. In that time, Adidas released new iterations of their women's basketball line. Puma signed Breanna Stewart to a multi-year deal. The market didn't stop moving just because Nike was taking their time perfecting Caitlin's shoe, and then there's the China factor. Nike's heavy involvement in Chinese manufacturing and their past controversies around labor practices and political issues have made them a target for criticism. Some fans wanted Caitlin to choose a different brand specifically to avoid that association. But from a business perspective, Nike's global distribution network, especially in China where basketball is massive, gives her shoe the best chance at international success. Let's break down what this Nike deal really means for Caitlin's career trajectory and for women's basketball as a whole, because this goes way beyond just what shoes she wears on the court. First, the financial reality. $28 million over 8 years sounds massive, and it is compared to other WNBA players. But put it in perspective, Zion Williamson signed a 5-year, $75 million deal with Jordan Brand that's $15 million per year. Ja Morant signed a multi-year deal with Nike in 2019 worth a reported $12 million per year. These are players who came into the league with hype, just like Caitlin, but their endorsement deals were 3 to 4 times larger annually. Now you can argue that the NBA has a bigger market, higher ratings, more established sneaker culture. All true. But Caitlin's rookie season delivered numbers that challenged that assumption. Her games were regularly outdrawing NBA games in the same time slot. Her jersey became the fastest-selling WNBA jersey in league history. The Fever went from bottom-tier attendance to selling out arenas on the road. So the question becomes, did Nike get a bargain? Did she sign too early before her market value was fully established? Or is $3.5 million per year actually the ceiling for a women's basketball player in today's market, regardless of performance? The answer probably lies somewhere in between. Nike locked her in before she proved she could sustain the hype through a full WNBA season. That's smart business on their end. But Caitlin also secured generational wealth and the signature shoe she wanted. which gives her long-term brand-building potential that goes beyond the initial contract value. Second, the signature shoe itself. She mentioned in the interview that the design process has been focused on making it unique while keeping it comfortable. She plays in Cobes, which are low-top, lightweight, and built for guards who need quick cuts and shooting mobility. That's likely the foundation for her shoe's design. But here's what makes this interesting. The women's basketball shoe market has historically failed because brands tried to make women's versions of men's shoes. Smaller sizes, different colors, but fundamentally the same design. What Caitlin's describing sounds different. She wants something built specifically for her game, not adapted from a men's model. If Nike actually delivers on that, it could change how women's basketball shoes are designed across the industry. Because right now, most WNBA players are wearing men's shoes in smaller sizes. There isn't a robust market for women's specific basketball footwear because the products haven't been good enough to create demand. Caitlin has the platform to change that. Her fan base will buy whatever she wears. The question is whether the shoe is good enough that other players start wearing it too, which is how signature shoes become iconic. Jordan's shoes became legendary because other players wanted to wear them. LeBron's shoes are worn across the league. If Caitlin's shoe becomes the preferred choice for WNBA guards, that's when it transcends being just a signature shoe and becomes a movement. Third, the cultural implications. She mentioned wanting to create chaseable colorways and collaborations. That's sneakerhead strategy. Limited releases, special editions, partnerships with other brands. That's how you build hype and demand that goes beyond basketball fans. Nike has mastered this with their Jordan releases. People camp out for days to get limited Jordan colorways. Resale markets for rare Jordans can hit thousands of dollars per pair. If Caitlin's shoe can tap into even a fraction of that culture, it becomes more than just athletic footwear. It becomes a collectible. And here's the thing, her fan base is rabid enough to support that. When her Iowa jerseys were released, they sold out in hours. When the Fever released her rookie jersey, same thing. There's demonstrated demand for Caitlin Clark merchandise that goes beyond typical athlete endorsement level. So when she talks about making a Chiefs colorway, she's not just pandering to her favorite NFL team. She's testing whether her shoe can cross over into broader sports culture. If casual Chiefs fans who don't watch the WNBA buy Caitlin Clark shoes because they're red and gold and she's a known Chiefs supporter, that's market expansion Nike desperately wants. Fourth, the timing risk. Her shoe is reportedly launching around April 2025, when the WNBA season starts. But there's a massive asterisk on that. The WNBA's CBA expires after the 2025 season, and negotiations are already contentious. Players are pushing for higher salaries, better travel conditions, and increased revenue sharing. The league is trying to balance those demands against financial realities. If there's a work stoppage, if the season is delayed or canceled, Caitlin's shoe launch loses its biggest marketing moment. You can't sell basketball shoes during a basketball lockout. The hype dies. The momentum stalls. Nike has to be preparing contingency plans for that scenario. But it's a real risk. And it's a risk that wouldn't exist if she'd signed with a brand that was ready to launch her shoes 6 months earlier. Fifth, the Steph Curry connection that didn't happen. Reports in late December confirmed that Curry was genuinely upset with Under Armour's leadership for not landing Caitlin. He saw her as the perfect brand partner, someone whose game mirrors his, whose appeal crosses demographics, and who could have elevated Under Armour's women's basketball line. Under Armour has been struggling in the basketball market for years. They have Curry, who's a massive star, but they haven't been able to convert that into broader market share against Nike and Adidas. Landing Caitlin could have changed that trajectory, but she chose Nike instead. And now Under Armour is stuck watching their biggest competitor sign the player their star athletes specifically wanted. That's a brutal business law. For Caitlin, though, it raises an interesting question. Would her career have been better served by being the face of Under Armour's women's basketball line, where she'd have been the undisputed priority, versus being one of many Nike athletes? Even with a signature at Nike, she's competing for attention and marketing resources with LeBron, Durant, Giannis, and dozens of other signature athletes. At Under Armour, she would have been the women's basketball brand, period. More focus, more investment, more control over her product line. She chose the bigger stage. Time will tell if that was the right call. Sixth, what this means for the next generation of WNBA stars. If Caitlin's shoe is successful, if it sells well and becomes culturally relevant, It opens the door for other players to negotiate bigger endorsement deals. Paige Bickers is coming into the league in 20. Juju Watkins is a few years behind her. Both are marketable stars with massive college followings. If Caitlin proves that a women's basketball signature shoe can be profitable, brands will invest more in the next wave of talent. But if her shoe underperforms, it could set the market back years. Brands will point to it as evidence that women's basketball doesn't have the commercial appeal to justify signature shoe investments. That's a lot of pressure on one product launch. But Caitlin seems aware of it. She's been strategic about her brand from the beginning. She understands that her success creates opportunities for others. And she's been vocal about wanting to elevate the entire league, not just herself. 7th, the elephant in the room, Nike's track record with women's athletes. They've been criticized for years for underpaying and undermarketing their women's stars. Allison Felix, one of the most decorated track athletes in history, left Nike in 2019 after they tried to reduce her pay during her pregnancy. Serena Williams has spoken about having to fight for equal marketing support compared to male tennis players. Nike has made public commitments to do better, to invest more in women's sports, to provide key resources. Caitlin's deal is part of that initiative, but actions speak louder than press releases. If Nike actually delivers on this shoe, if they market it properly, if they give it the same launch support they'd give a men's signature shoe, it proves they're serious about changing. If they half-ass it, if the shoe gets a quiet release with minimal marketing, it confirms the critics were right all along. Caitlin's betting on the former. She's betting that Nike sees her as the athlete who can finally break through in women's basketball footwear. And she's betting that her platform is big enough to force Nike to treat this launch as a priority. So here's the ultimate question. Was choosing Nike the right decision? From a pure financial standpoint, maybe not. She probably could have gotten more money elsewhere. From a timeline standpoint, definitely not. She could have had a shoe on the market 6 months ago with a different brand. But from a legacy standpoint, from a cultural impact standpoint, from a I want to be associated with Michael Jordan and the most iconic brand in basketball standpoint, she made the choice that aligns with her long-term vision. And that's what makes this fascinating. She didn't optimize for short-term money, she optimized for long-term brand building. She's thinking like an entrepreneur, not just an athlete. She wants her shoe to be more than just footwear. She wants it to